Hello, this is Luis Lima once again with our weekly program, Spiritism, a Closer Look, Evolution. And this is transmitted via Kardec Radio. This is our program number 21. Okay, so we're going to continue talking about evolution, which by now we already know it's something huge. There's a lot to be studied, there's a lot to be discussed, and that's what we've been doing every week here at Kardec Radio. So we are going to start tonight's program just like any other day. We're going to go back to the spirit trivia that we presented last week, which is this question that we present every week, and you can just go to evolution.spirittrivia.com and cast your answer. So at the end of the program tonight, there's going to be another question. And the question is posted there for 1 week, so you can always come in and cast your answer. We don't collect any information from you. It's all anonymous. So here is the question for past week. How does Spiritism see the progress of humanity? And so we spoke about progress, and we spoke a lot about intellectual progress, a little bit of moral progress. So how does Spiritism see that? So we got 4 possibilities here. So let's go through them. A, we should never focus on material progress. Not at all. Spiritism doesn't say any of that, right? Intellectual progress should never interfere in moral progress. It's also not what Spiritism says about it. That's not it. Letter C, progress of humanity is based mostly on scientific discoveries. Not at all. Science is one thing. They study their stuff per se. We study the intelligent principle, as we saw in the very beginning, probably on the first and second meetings. So if you want to go back and check that out, please do. But that's not it. So D, last one, progress of humanity is a combination of moral and intellectual progress. And that's exactly what it is. That's the right answer. If your answer was D, you got it right. So congratulations to you. And this is exactly what we see in the Spirit's book. Okay, progress of humanity, it's a combination of 2 things. It's moral and intellectual progress combined. And by the way, at times throughout history of humanity, we see that at times we have a little bit more progress, more moral progress, and less intellectual. Then the other way around, a little bit more intellectual, less moral. That's more or less what we are going through right now in humanity. We are having a lot of intellectual progress for so many years and decades and centuries, by the way, and we are not having a great deal of moral progress. But that's a conversation for tonight and next week as well. So that was the right answer, combination of moral and intellectual progress. So let's go to what we saw last week. Very, very quickly, we're not going to go through this again. We would just repeat everything. But what we did last week, we started in the year before the year 3500 BC. And we went through a series of, I would say, events in humanity, milestones in humanity in general, things that we conquered throughout all these, 5,000, 6,000 years. And we made comments as we were going along. We made some comments. So we started way back in 3500 BC and went until the current days. So we look at this and we extracted some interesting things. This little sketch that you see here, which is, it shows all the events that we discussed. Some of them have to be with intellectual progress only, some with moral progress only, and some are a mix. So what we did was we pulled out some of these events that had to do with morality, moral. On the top line, we spoke about the good morals. On the bottom line, in red, we spoke about something that was not very good, where we show our lack of morality, our lack of understanding on the natural laws of the laws of God. So that's what we did last time. Tonight, we are going to pick 4 events in relatively modern history, starting in the 1600s. These 4 events, and we're going to explain how and why, they made us turn to the wrong side. We were supposed to turn right, and it made us turn left. What does it mean? These events, as they happened, they made us focus on everything material and very little, if any, on the quest about spirit and all of that. As we're going to explain as we go along. So the first event that we are going to pull out here from the list is René Descartes in 1640. Now see, all these events that we are going to say here, that we're going to mention here, these 4 events actually, they don't have to do with the person. It's not that the person involved did something right or wrong. It's not this. These people, all of them you're going to see, they were all great, needed people to, boost humanity in general. But the outcome of their work led some people in the future, after they were gone, in the future, to understand something that wasn't really the case. And that's why we made these wrong turns towards materialism, and we forgot everything else. So René Descartes, why is he here? Because, first of all, he was one of these many men in one, right? So he was a physicist, philosopher, mathematician, fantastic person, very, very intellectual person for his time. We're talking about the 1600s here, so we don't have a lot of brilliant people like he was. Anyway, he was the one who told us, or who first mentioned in the Western civilization, not in the Eastern, because they had done that 5,000 or 6,000 years ago. But in the Western civilization, he was the one to mention that there was a point of contact between the soul and the body, and that would have been the pineal gland. And since those days, we started studying little by little the pineal gland, today much more than ever. But anyway, he was the first to mention that. So he brought a lot of information. He wrote a lot of different things, beautiful and very interesting ideas. At the end, after he was gone, and so you got to remember one thing: the church. This is 1600s, 1640 or so. The church is still on our necks. They are still on us. They're still watching everybody closely, because if you don't do what they want, if you say something contrary to what they want to say, or they want to listen, you're going to be in trouble. So within this context, he was able to produce the information he produced and say the things he said, and still come out clean, if you will. So one of the things he said is this: the body, we are composed of 2 parts, if you will, body and soul. And he defines these things this way: the body is this physical, it has a physical nature, something physical, it's matter, and it follows the laws of physics. For example, if I go to the top of the building, 30 floors, and I jump, because of one of the laws of physics, gravity, I'm going to come down on a high speed and I'm going to die. So this physical body follows all the known laws of physics. And by the way, we didn't know all the laws of physics. And René Descartes is before Newton. So Newton comes in the 1700s. Anyway, so he says, because it's something physical, it relates to the physical plane, and it has, we can track movement. There is color, image, weight, and all of these things. They are part of something material. That's what our body is, material. Now we have another part, which is the soul. The soul doesn't have a physical nature. Its nature is non-physical. He wouldn't say what it was still, but it's something non-physical. The laws to which this soul is put through, these are not the laws of physics. They are unknown laws. Unknown in his days. Today, we're getting close to what quantum physics, quantum mechanics is. Okay, so, but in his days, unknown, completely unknown. And, the body has characteristics like we saw: movement, image, color, and so, but the soul doesn't have any of these things. It has other things. And he would list as desires, memory, feelings, sentiments, and all of that. And he would say, or he would kind of politely say, that the soul is something that the church is in charge of. In charge meaning not that the soul is owned by the church, but they are in charge of, supporting you, dealing with your feelings and desires, helping you. That's supposed to be the Christian message, after all, right? So that's what the church was supposed to be doing. They weren't, but they were supposed to. So in order to avoid trouble, René Descartes said, okay, so let's look at the body, and the soul is something that we'll leave it to the church. Okay, the outcome of this years later was that we need to focus on the physical body and forget about the soul. So we don't care about the soul because the church is doing something for me. They are praying for me. They are doing what they have to do on my behalf. So in 1640, we kind of started to look into something more physical than spiritual or the soul. And then 1670, Newton comes along, and Newton, we spoke about him a little bit last time. Newton he was this great mathematician and physicist, just like Descartes was. And he had one question. The question was, how does the universe work? That was his question. Well, in order to be able to answer to that question, he dives into research and studies a lot of different things, and he finds influences between orbits and planets, and so gravity and all of that. He developed a method for his study and to conduct his research. And the method was this. First of all, I'm only concerned about what is material. I'm concerned about the planets, the comets, the satellites. I'm not concerned about anything else. No God, nothing like this spirit. It's not my quest, he would say. He wasn't looking for that answer. He was looking for the answer on how the universe works in terms of astronomy, using a more current word. What does the astronomer tells us how the universe works? That was his question, and that's what he was looking for. With that, in order to imagine yourself, if you look out the universe right now, a bunch of planets and different things. So he said, oh, we got to break this down a little bit. The universe is too big. It's too many things. So let's break a little bit in parts. And this breaking in parts, divide and conquer, right? If you will, it's called reductionism. For example, on a car, right? On your car, if something goes wrong, let's say, for example, you cannot start the car for some reason. So you take it, so the mechanic comes over, and he will say, well, he starts eliminating. Well, let's divide the car in parts. It's not the wheels. It's not, the doors. It's not the seats. It's nothing like this. He starts dividing the car in parts and pieces and eliminates what's not necessary. And he's going to get to the bottom of it, which is, the ignition has a problem. And then he fixes it. So he reduces the car little by little in parts and pieces. So reductionism was one of the things that helped Newton to get to where he wanted. And the third thing, as a consequence, is what he called the determinism, meaning if I know how something works, I can predict what's going to happen. That's determinism. If I really knew how something works, I can predict what's going to happen. So that's Newton. So what we made out of this thing years later, you see, his intention was the best of all, to understand how the planets work and all of that. But he had, in his studies, God, spirit, spirituality, they were not the thing. So we understood that, no, Newton is material only. He's looking at matter. Matter is what we need to study. He's a great guy. He he found out a lot of the answers that we needed, and God is not needed for those answers. That's what we took out of his work. He didn't say that. He never said anything like this. But that's what the trail was, okay, after he left. So 1640 and 1670. And here's another one. 1859, Charles Darwin. Well, we know a lot about him by now. We spoke so much about him. Great British naturalist. And he was the one who was studying the evolution of the species, trying to find the answers if one species, a certain species, would leave or would leave traces for us to find the next one, and so on. So that was his thing. And by studying this, he comes to two things. First of all, species are born or they start and they have to fight for survival. And that's what he calls survival of the fittest. And new species are born, and because they fight in the survival of the fittest, there's going to be a process of natural selection in which, some keep going, some species keep going, some others just disappear. We're not getting too many details here today because we already spoke about this in the past. But the thing here, the important thing is this. Until then, we are in 1859 here, okay? So for almost 500 years, so starting in the 1200s, 1300s, we were asking the church questions that we didn't have an answer for. They were the providers of the truth, but they don't have the answer that we needed. Okay, one of the great questions, we spoke about this already, was, okay, you tell me the world was built in 6 or 7 days, depends on how you see it. In which day was the giraffe born? Because that neck had to be consequence of evolution. So that kind of thing, the answer wouldn't come from the church. And little by little, the questions were climbing in number, and the answers were declining in quality. So with Charles Darwin, several of the answers that we were expecting started to show up. They started to show up. And then with time, we had a new provider of the truth. So Charles Darwin is one of these dividers, before and after, in which before him, the provider of the truth was the church. After him, the provider of the truth changed hands to the science, and still is today. If we want to be sure of something, is it proven scientifically? We still live by this today. So the provider of the truth changes hands when Charles Darwin publishes his work and explains what he was going after. But that leaves something behind, a trail. The trail is, if there is survival of the fittest, and that's gonna, as a consequence, there will be natural selection, I need to compete. I need to survive. And that leaves competition way ahead of cooperation or collaboration. So you see, his work was fantastic. He never said that. He never said, do not cooperate. But there was a trail that was left by those who came after him that, enforced the idea, competition, survival of the fittest, we got to survive. If you're in survival mode, you're not cooperating, you're not collaborating, which is exactly the other way around. So unfortunately, that came out of his great, beautiful work. So that's the third point in history where we kind of enforced ourselves the idea of materialism is the way to go, unfortunately. And there's a fourth point. And this we mentioned also briefly also. James Watson and Francis Crick, they discovered the structure of the DNA in 1953 here in New York City. And in order to study, you have to, first of all, you have to see how this is done. They have to look into a microscope, trying to find within the cell, okay, with a bunch of proteins moving around. So nothing at all is static. They gotta find the DNA to look at the structure. So this is done by trial and error. This is not the DNA. This is, you separate. You just, this is not it. This is not it until you hit it. And that's what they got to. They hit, this is the DNA we found. In order to explain what they found, they made an assumption. Okay, they said, for now, we're going to consider that we cannot change our genes. That became known as the dogma, central dogma of molecular biology. So we cannot change our genes. Genes are not changeable. We have those genes, that's our genetics, and it's going to stay that way. That became known, later on, it became genetic determinism. That's how we call it today. So genetic determinism is this idea, this assumption that we cannot change our genes. Because they were studying something, they needed to contain the study to a certain, part. Otherwise, they wouldn't get anywhere. So they made that assumption. And because of that, we understood we are, once and for all, held captive of our genes. I'm a victim of my DNA. The guilty ones are my father and my mother. And that's it, victimization. You see, that's not exactly what they said. That was an assumption to study. And of course, this is a huge study. It's just a discovery. Now we're going to deal with the discovery. What does it bring? What does it let us know now that we didn't know before? It's a full-blown study that starts in 1953. But the outcome was, we are victims of our genes. Okay, so that leaves out responsibility. So the idea here is, I'm not really responsible for, what I'm doing, the things that I'm going to do, because it's in my genes. I'm aggressive, and I'm going to be aggressive. There's no point in trying to change because it's in my genes. Right? And I'm intolerant, so same thing. I'm impatient, same thing. So the idea that we are victims or held captive of our genes came after their work. So if you look at these 4 points in history, okay, little by little, we were painting to, or we were being led, because we understood this way, we were being led towards materialism. And that's what it is today in our societies, in the planet, humanity. We are very much materialist. We still believe, most of us, that we are held captive of our genes, that competing is more important than cooperating. God is not as important as, anything else. And we're not paying attention to our soul. We're paying attention to our physical body. Well, it might be interesting, but, we shouldn't be that way. To be able to get out of this paradigm, we need to do something. Okay? What do we have to do? Then I'm gonna pick up something that Einstein, himself, the great one, Einstein, he said. And when I first read this, and I was studying this that I'm talking to you at the time, and this phrase just hit me, something that he said. Look at what he said. The significant problems we have cannot be solved at the same level of thinking with which we created them. So if we created a problem thinking this way here, in order to fix it, we got to come above. If we use the same method that created the problem, we're going to stay in the problem, possibly make it worse. We need to come with the answers, with elements from a higher level. So you see here, all of these things, all of these problems that we are showing here, they came from being led to believe that materialism, the materialistic paradigm, is the thing. In order for me to undo or to, get into a different paradigm, the answer cannot come from materialism. It has to come from something at least one level above. Materialism leads to this. If I want to get away from this, it can't be, the answer cannot come from materialism. It has to come from something different. Okay, what is that something different? Well, I think we got the answer, right? Something that comes from above. It doesn't come from the material plane. It doesn't come from the material, the physical realm. It comes from one, at least, to say the minimum, at least one layer above all. It comes from those who were here. They migrated to another reality, spiritual world or spirit world, and they are able to see from a higher standard, from a higher, they have higher visibility than we do. Those can bring us the answers, because those no longer subscribe to the materialistic paradigm. They are on a different level altogether. They are this, at least one level above the Einstein mentions. These guys, these spirits, they are the ones that can help us see the paradigm that we subscribe to, why it's not working. And, you know, if I switch paradigms and do something else and I subscribe to another paradigm, my life is going to be a lot better, a lot more complete, a lot more interesting. So Spiritism is going to teach us how to focus on the soul, not on the physical body like we thought from the 1640s and up. It's going to tell me that, oh yeah, God is important. Don't leave it outside, you know. God is part of all equations. All equations. And we got to be concerned about it. We got to be concerned about God and feed our spirit. Spiritism is going to teach us that in order to be better, live a better life, be closer to happiness, I can't do this. Absolutely cannot do this by competing. I have to cooperate. I have to collaborate. So we are part of this family Jesus calls brothers and sisters, right? We are part of this family, and we got to work together, not one against the other, not trying to compete, not trying to, you know, survival of the fittest in terms of human standards. Spiritism is going to tell us that, yes, we are responsible for what we do. And how much percent? 100%. There is no, I'm 80% responsible and my father and mother are 20. No such a thing. We are responsible 100% for what we do. No victimization. Spiritism does not teach anything about victimization. It tells us how to get away from it, how to, this victimization is like I dive into a pool of victimization and I can't get out, and then I gotta, put my head just above the water to breathe. Yeah, that's what Spiritism tells me, how I get out of this, how I incur into being accepting, being responsible for everything that I do. And from there, I can set my own pace, my own standards within the new paradigm, within the laws of God. And that, yes, that's going to be a different story. It's going to make me grow. Then I'm going to be in growth mode, not survival mode. And that's what Spiritism tells us and teaches, how to be happier by following the laws of God. Well, I wanted to thank Gabriel. He's online, so thank you for following us, Gabriel, and finding it so interesting. By the way, Gabriel, when I studied this many years ago, I was so into this thing because it grabbed my soul by the neck, if you will. And I said, wow, this is it. This is a great understanding of things. It's we're looking at the situation from outside the black box, and you can see everything in a different perspective. That's what a new paradigm is. Okay. So, guys, thank you so much for participating with us tonight. And again, once again, I encourage you to go to our trivia of the week, evolution.spirittrivia.com. Uh, while I was doing the program here, I posted a new question for the week. So you're invited to go there, participate, cast your answer. Once again, we do not collect any information from you. No name, no email address, no IP address, no nothing like this. It's totally anonymous, so feel free, go there, and we will discuss the answers to our Spirit Trivia next week. Be well.